Today, I want to give a speech on International Day of Conscience, and I believe it is particularly meaningful. In the past 20 years of our involvement in the Tai Ji Men tax case of injustice, we have found that conscience is particularly important for judicial and tax professionals. As for the judge's discretion and the tax officer's arbitrary decisions, conscience is the guiding principle. Without conscience, people will be greatly harmed. We are aware of the two swords of state power that cause the greatest harm to the people. One is the judicial power, and the other is the power of taxation. The former may arbitrarily deprive the people of their freedom, while the latter may take away their property. Both cause immense suffering to the general public. Therefore, when it comes to protecting human rights, it is imperative to uphold the rule of law in both judicial proceedings and tax legislation based on constitutional principles, rather than allowing judicial officials to make arbitrary decisions. However, without conscientious judgment, free evaluation of evidence can cause great hardship and suffering. Let us take a closer look at the Tai Ji Men case. The baseless and illegal indictment filed by prosecutor Ho Kwon-jin caused immense pain and suffering. There was no factual investigation, which was ridiculously flawed. It even included coercion of a tax officer, Fu-Chiang, to provide false testimony. Before his passing away, Fu-Chiang came to a realization and revealed that prosecutor Ho Kwon-jin had manipulated him into participating in the false testimony. It is evident that prosecutor Ho had taken advantage of the Tai Ji Men case in both criminal and tax cases in the name of religious cleansing and political purge. I believe this is a very significant landmark case of human rights violation. Prior to prosecutor Ho Kwon-jin's investigation, there were many false accusations made through anonymous letters. However, the prosecutors from Kaohsiung and Hsinchu quickly dismissed these claims. Why? Because they did their jobs based on their conscience. They did not find them credible and dismissed them accordingly. However, some prosecutors, who claim to be the guardians of justice, let their self-righteousness cloud their judgment. As Deputy Commander Chong mentioned earlier, the greater the desire, the smaller the conscience, and in some cases, there may be no conscience at all. Some people are born with a strong desire to hold positions of power, and they seek to perform actively. See, despite engaging in illegal and unethical behavior. For example, the Control Yuan made a report that he had 8 flaws and should be punished. But it turns out that he got promoted to higher positions. What's more, he even aspired to become a chief prosecutor. I believe this is the greatest irony in Taiwan's legal and moral education. You see, the wrongful prosecution of one who abused their power and broke the law. Such a prosecution not only impacted the Tai Ji Men master and disciples, but also drained the judicial resources of the entire nation for a whole decade and 7 months. The individual in question was accused of violating the law in 1997, and it wasn't until 2007 that the Supreme Court finally acquitted them of all charges. Who footed the bill for these 10 years of legal expenditures? Was it the taxpayers' burden or the collective social costs? As a matter of fact, in 2009, the government compensated the accused parties for their wrongful imprisonment. Who paid for this miscarriage of justice? Did it come out of the national treasury, or did it fall on the shoulders of the people at large? Thus, it is of utmost importance that we uphold conscience towards the judicial practitioners who dedicatedly serve our society. Of course, we should not forget that tax officials are more important. Tai Ji Men should never face a tax-related lawsuit. However, the tax issues surrounding the Tai Ji Men stem from these fabricated charges of illegal misconduct. A conscientious tax officer would withdraw all the tax bills that were inappropriately issued on the basis of illegally drafted indictments once the court delivers a verdict of not guilty. The tax bills they issued were blindly and unethically done without conducting any substantial investigation. They simply relied on the prosecutor's illegal indictment and fabricated amounts to issue tax bills accordingly. Tai Ji Men spent 27 years rescuing these groundless, abusive, and fabricated tax bills, but the issue remains unresolved. Therefore, when we talk about the era of conscience movement, we will understand that the Tai Ji Men case is not very difficult to solve. It is not difficult at all. Why? It's because we just need to use our conscience. Initially, Tai Ji Men was issued with 6 years of illegal tax invoices due to abuse of power. However, for 5 of those years, the National Taxation Bureau had already corrected them to 0 by themselves. Why did they correct it to 0 by themselves? It's because during the entire administrative remedy process, the Supreme Administrative Court ruled in favor of Tai Ji Men. The most important thing is the Supreme Court's ruling on case number 107, paragraph 422, which is known as the most conscientious landmark tax ruling in Taiwan. It was because of this conscientious landmark ruling that finally put an end to this wrongful case of Tai Ji Men's tax invoices for the past 5 years. It is because this conscientious ruling finally acknowledged the fact that Tai Ji Men is a Menpai of Qigong, martial arts and self-cultivation, not a cram school. This simple fact had already existed, and it is a fact that everyone, including the tax officials, should have recognized. Tai Ji Men is basically a Menpai of Qigong, martial arts and self-cultivation. It is a solid fact, isn't it? As a national group that preserves the culture and art of Qigong, this fact should be recognized by all the people in the country and around the world. However, why did these tax officials close their eyes? Why did some of the judges in the administrative court ignore their conscience and make wrongful judgments? It's because the greater the desire, the less conscience they have. Why? Because of what? It's because of the bonuses, the performance indicators, and the taxes. If they collect more taxes, they will get bonuses and better performance evaluations, which means they can get promoted. This is how it is. The greater the desire, the less conscience. So when we talk about conscience, we will find that conscience is more important than just the law. While the law provides a basic standard for behavior, it only restricts us from breaking the law. However, is the law truly effective? If it were, there wouldn't be so many people in prisons today. Therefore, we must start with basic education on conscience and character. When one understands how to respect others, the correct rules and norms to follow, and what is morally good, they will not commit evil deeds, and thus will not break the law. This would lead to the closure of prisons, and the country and society could then move towards normalization. This pursuit is ultimately striving for the ideal of a unified world, a common goal for humanity. Thus, I believe Dr. Hong Taozi to be a visionary and a wise individual. When you have a conscience, you will make wise judgments. So, we can say that the ruling in the Supreme Administrative Court's decision 107 GNZ 422 is a wise and conscientious decision. This is because it clearly states that in the Tai Ji Men case of tax assessment for the year 1992, which was mistakenly ruled in the year 1992, the court did not consider the facts established by the criminal court's decision or the results of the investigation conducted by the Ministry of Finance in the interdepartmental meeting of the Executive Yuan in the year 2011. The court did not take into account these new facts and evidence. The ruling also clearly states that the judgment made in the year 1992 was a mistaken decision. The National Taxation Bureau knew this fact, and as per Article 117 of the Administrative Procedure Act, they could have revoked the erroneous tax assessment and withdrawn the application for enforcement. This is something that the National Taxation Bureau could have done on its own, without any legal requirement, and it is something that a conscientious tax officer should have done in the first place. You issued 6 tax bills, and even though they were for different years, the underlying facts were the same. In 2019, Based on the Supreme Administrative Court's ruling in 2018, you acknowledge that Tai Ji Men is a Mianbai of Qigong and martial arts, and not a cram school. You corrected all 5 years of tax assessments to 0. So why did you use a tax bill from a cram school for Tai Ji Men in 1992, even though you knew it was a mistaken judgment? As confirmed by the Supreme Administrative Court, Tai Ji Men could not have suddenly become a cram school in 1992, which is impossible. Anyone in the international community would find this absurd. What kind of tax and revenue collection agency is the Republic of China running? What kind of court ruling is this? How could you make such an erroneous, contradictory, and illegal determination? Furthermore, you are from the same agency, making different determinations. Anyone with a conscience, a little bit of wisdom, and judgment ability would know that the 1992 tax and revenue ruling cannot be executed. But do the judges at the Administrative Enforcement Agency not understand? Do they not know? They know. But why do they still ignore their conscience and auction off the Tai Ji Men's sacred site? Is it desire? Is it for money? Is it for performance metrics? Yes, this is such a significant amount of tax revenue being collected. This year's performance metrics are almost halfway achieved with this tax revenue. They may even be dividing the spoils. Now the Shirlin branch is even sending letters to the Hsinchu branch, saying that they want to split the performance metrics for the execution of the tax revenue. What kind of civil servants are they? Just now, that accountant, Tsai said that being in the public sector is a good opportunity for spiritual cultivation. However, being in the public sector also makes it easiest to accumulate negative karma. While others may accumulate 1 point of negative karma for their actions, a public sector worker can accumulate 10 points. Why is this? Because for every mistake made in a judgment or tax assessment, it's not just one individual who suffers, but their entire family. In the case of Tai Ji Men's tax case, it's not just the master's tax bill, but the tax bill of all Tai Ji Men disciples. Over the past 27 years, how much effort and resources have Tai Ji Men's master and disciples expended on this case? If these resources were used for Taiwan or the international community, how much conflict could have been prevented, and how much help could it have brought to the country? So, what I'm saying is that conscience is particularly important for judicial and tax personnel. As long as they act with a conscience, solving tax cases like the one involving Tai Ji Men wouldn't be difficult at all. That concludes my report. Thank you.